Hey everyone, Pastor Farney here again with our fourth class in our Bible study series on devotional practices. We've talked about devotional practices in worship, Lutheran contributions to devotional practices, and now we venture off into talking about a series of practices that are probably a little less familiar to both me and to you. Today's lecture is on devotional practices of simplicity, those centered around quietness and other ways of slowing down the busyness of life to make time and focus for God. Now, the first thing we should ask ourselves is why we might aim at practices like this. What are the needs that we have spiritually that we meet with simple practices? The first one is, busyness. I don't know about all of you, but I often find myself quite busy. Meetings and work and attending to friends and family, working on the house, keeping the bills paid, and bank and retirement accounts, all just so. And I'm not even a particularly important or busy person. My kid isn't even here yet. So I can't imagine how much it might be for some of you. The constant availability and connectivity of life makes everything busy, busy, busy. And if we do give ourselves a little break, it's only a recharge to be back at full strength and full speed, to be right back at it again. The greatest sin in our modern life is slowing down. I think that's why everyone in our society is always driving so fast. I've been around Evansville, and unless you know something I don't, there's not really any place to go. Slow the heck down. Everything will be there when you get there. Another reason we might look at simple practices is because the world is loud. It gets louder every day. We're constantly bombarded with advertisement, warnings, news, sirens, all sorts of people telling us, hey, you need to listen to me right now, trying to take our attention, and they tend to be pretty good at it. Sometimes I think we fill our own minds up with noise to avoid hearing our own thoughts, which I certainly understand. But it's so difficult to make any headway that way spiritually, where there's room for contemplation, for prayer, for listening to the still, small voice of God whispering to us. And so we try to make that room. Make that time for God. Give the Spirit some space to work. Otherwise, he'll find his own space, and it may not be so cozy. And the last reason we look at these practices of simplicity is that our culture is addicted to productivity. Every day is an opportunity to get something done. We all want to get to the end of our lives having accomplished a lot. And certainly there is a lot to do. You never really come to the end of it. There's always more laundry to be folded. The grass could always use another cut. But sometimes we're so busy that we forget what's really necessary. And so I want to bring us back to this story that I'm sure you're quite familiar with. You probably knew exactly which passage I was going to bring you to, but it's one that bears repeating. It's this story from Luke 10, the story of Mary and Martha. Luke writes, "Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me.' But the Lord answered her, 'Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken from her.'" Now, I love this story because it's so clear what the moral is. Stop working, start listening. Now I have a dear friend who's now a pastor up in Minnesota who struggles a lot with this story. He always says, well, what would things look like without the Marthas? Who would get things done? And I think that's a keen insight. That's what we all kind of think. But it's precisely the wrong question. The question is, what would things look like with twice as many Marys? What would things look like if we let God get things done? If we cared less about straightening up the house, more about straightening up our souls. And so we get to hear the nuts and bolts, some suggestions, some ways that our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ have tried and made to make room in their life for God. Now, the first set of ways to quiet the busyness of life are called slowing exercises. Various ways to take the long way in our everyday activities. Drive a little slower, take a little more time to eat your meals, or to brush your teeth, or to shower. And while you're spending that extra time on the mundane, sort of mindless tasks of life, focus your mind on God. Maybe give yourself over to prayer, to meditation. Take the concerns of your busy day and give them over to God. You're not going to discharge your stress and anxiety by just getting more things done. The only way to do that is to let God be your God. If you're the kind of person that finds you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, remember that that's not only sort of, mentally unhealthy, it's idolatry. It's sinful. You are not God. You never will be. So stop acting like it. Let him take care of the big stuff. You rest easy. Still do all the things he's put in front of you, but let go of that sense of urgency. Stop thinking you're so dang important. Unless any of you regularly perform emergency surgeries, take some more deep breaths in life. Try to live at a slower pace. Leave a little more room for God in your mind and in your life, and see if you have more or less lacking. Now, the other sort of exercises you might try to aim at look directly at simplicity. The first one I call downsizing. Now, I'm sure some of you are all too familiar with downsizing, for better or for worse. But I'm not asking you to move somewhere this week, but rather maybe try and cut something out of your life. Maybe you found you've bit off a bit more than you can chew in one way or another. You've made for yourself more obligations than you can reasonably fulfill without burning the candle at both ends. So maybe find something that you can cancel. Find something you can cut out. Or maybe busyness isn't what troubles you, but material concerns tend to fill your head. You're always worried about all your stuff. Well, give something away. Maybe think about a time that someone complimented something you have and just give it to them. Just get it out of your life. Make it their worry and not yours. Another exercise of simplicity is honesty. And I don't mean to suggest that you're all habitual liars and you never tell the truth. Nothing like that. But I want to direct us towards that tendency in our culture not to tell it like it is. I like to speak in half-truths or white lies. Instead of saying, I'm not really interested in that, we say, I'm just so busy that day, but thank you. And these aren't quite lies in the sense that we intend to mislead people. We just say things like this for good reason, to spare others the complications of the truth. But nevertheless, we can construct for ourselves a world of pleasant fictions rather than living in the good, bad, and ugly truth. The idea of being simple and honest comes especially from Jesus' words, his command to let your yes be yes and your no be no. Now, trouble with following anything Jesus says is it causes your life to be more painful. It causes friction to tell the truth like that. But that's part of the Christian life. living simply and honestly can help us break out of complicated and distracting balancing acts that can fill our minds and distract us from the one thing that is needful. Now, the last exercise of simplicity is one I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's self-explanatory. It's called unplugging. I remember when I was young, I know I'm not young now, but when I was even younger, old people would always talk about how young people constantly have their nose buried in a screen. And they were right, that was true, but now I think things have flipped. Sometimes I find it difficult to interact with some of my older relatives because they haven't really adjusted to proper usage of God's gifts in electronics and all the screens that He's blessed us with. And so maybe you find that that's true for you. And so it may be helpful for you to give yourself a day or a set of hours throughout the day where you're not going to pick up your phone unless you find it ringing off the hook, you get a call or a text. You're going to put it aside. You're not going to use it as a distraction, or and even that you're just not going to turn on the TV. If there's big news, they'll talk about it tomorrow. You're going to take time away. You're going to clear your mind. Maybe instead of picking up the TV remote, you're going to pick up your portals of prayer or a Bible. Or maybe you are going to pick up your phone, but you're just going to call an old friend, or better yet, drive out and go pay him a visit. Now, of course, in all these practices, there's the temptation to make them just self-help. And self-help is fine, but it's probably not going to get you anywhere spiritually. These will all just be self-help tips unless you remember why you're doing them. To make space and room and time for God. To take you away from your work and away from the busyness of life and distraction and anything else, so that you can open yourself up to God. Take what He has in store for your life and work with that. And now, as always, I encourage you to put this into practice this week. Pick one of the simplicity exercises we talked about, or maybe come up with one of your own and try it for the week. And maybe make a note of what happened when you drove slower, what you saw when you took the long way home, looked around a little at the world God has put you in. What did your family talk about when you turned off the TV and the screens for the evening? How did you sit at the feet of Christ this week? And for those of you joining us at the next Bible study class, we'll discuss what you saw, what you experienced, what was helpful, what wasn't. And as always, God bless you, and we'll see you next time.